Hey y'all, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we're going to be talking about how I stopped mindless doom scrolling as a chronically online software engineer, less time scrolling and more time doing things that I actually enjoy. So I am chronically online. I always have my phone within reach and usually a laptop and often two within a few feet of me. I work as a software engineer by day and I moonlight as a creative technologist and YouTuber when I have the time and energy. This means I'm often on my devices to accomplish the things I want and need to do, whether that's coding for work or researching a topic or writing my next post. Now, this also means that I have easy access to social media and other apps that are hyper-engineered to get you to spend more time scrolling and consuming content. Trust me, I worked at Instagram as a software engineer for 3.5 years, so I've seen it all. Now, the problem is scrolling isn't typically how I want to spend my precious time. More scrolling means less time for things that I actually want to do, things that are engaging, fulfilling, and exciting for me long term. And so here I'm going to share some strategies that I've implemented to successfully moderate my scrolling to a level that I am happy with. Less time spent scrolling and more time doing things that I actually enjoy. Quitting social media entirely did not work for me. Now, quitting social media entirely is often recommended in less screen time forums, books, and blog posts. While this certainly would work, I found it didn't work for me. I first read about this in Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport and tried it out for a few months by deleting my social media apps. You can read my takeaways from the book and this blog post here. Now, the initial results were actually pretty shocking. I discovered opening up my phone to look at Instagram was habitual. This manifested by me blankly staring at my phone, but not sure why I was looking at it whenever I had a few minutes of downtime. I eventually realized I was habitually trying to open Instagram, but because I deleted the app, my muscle memory short-circuited because it couldn't find it, which seems pretty bad and kind of sad and quite a bit scary. And so this would be times when I was just kind of like waiting in an elevator or, I'm eating food with one hand and I look at my phone with the other one. And then I would find myself just blankly staring at it and being like, why am I blankly staring at it? And you look in like the search box and it says like INS. So you went to go search for Instagram, but then I guess my brain didn't see the colors and so it just short-circuited and didn't click the thing. That's what I would find, and I found myself doing that so frequently throughout the day, and I didn't even notice that I was doing that habitually. I just knew I was scrolling Instagram, but I didn't realize it was a habit, a tick that I had subconsciously. And over those months, I lessened the habit. There was less looking at my phone for no reason and more doing other things to fill my time. But I will say that I started to feel a bit disconnected and uninspired. Like it or not, social media is one of the greatest inventions of the century, unlocking unparalleled ways of communicating and sharing ideas. I found I was missing new ideas from online discussions, missing out on connection updates and conversations, especially from those that lived far away from me, and missing a lot of group messages. A lot of people in my circle used Facebook and Instagram messaging for groups, and I'm a proud green text, so often that was the only way for me to get inside group texts, at least with, the iPhone users. So I wanted to find a way to get the benefits I was missing, but without the downsides, and so here's what actually worked for me. The first was to time block problematic apps to limit access during the day. So my number one most effective strategy for stopping doom scrolling is limiting my access to problematic apps. This allows me to access the apps for their utility, but limits the downsides, sucking up my time and attention when I have other things I'd rather do. There are two main ways to time block apps, both of which are complementary. The first is to limit access times, so this means only access Instagram after 1800 on weekdays. And the second is to limit usage time, so this would be more like only 1 hour of Instagram per day. My current approach is to simply limit access times. This implicitly limits my usage time due to how I time block my calendar, which we will discuss later, and it prevents me from getting distracted from doing my most important tasks during the day, and provides a bit of flexibility if I decide to spend a bit more time on socials one day versus another. For example, I might batch responses on a Monday if I haven't looked at my socials in the past few days. And so in those cases, I like having a little bit of flexibility, or maybe 1 hour blanket across all the apps doesn't make sense. Now I want to call out that I don't block all scrolling apps, just the ones that I found problematic for me. I found that some scrolling is inevitable as more and more apps implement their own version of it, so cutting off access to all of them simply means pushing you towards apps that you haven't scrolled yet. For me, some scrolling is okay, and some scrolling apps are so useful that blocking them gets in the way of what I want to do. So here's some examples of scrolling apps that I have not blocked, and kind of why they're not problematic for me. So the first is Reddit, which I found really useful for researching discussions. I still think it's the best platform for discussions on the internet. I do less scrolling and more searching for discussions on Reddit via Google, so it's not really a problem for me because I don't actually find myself using the scroll features that much. LinkedIn is useful for me in a professional capacity, often looking at people's backgrounds and responding to comments on posts. And I find that LinkedIn posts and conversations are generally pretty boring, and so I just don't find myself having an urge to scroll on there, so there's really no reason for me to block it. And finally, YouTube is useful for me from a hobby capacity because, you're watching this video. And so I don't scroll YouTube that much, so it's not that much of a problem for me. And I do like to watch videos I have saved whenever I have time or I'm doing something with my hands, like a chore or something. And I also check in on my channel semi-regularly, so I don't want to block it, and it's not really a problem that I don't block the scrolling there. So what are my current limits? So here's what I am blocking and my limits for those. So the apps that I block are Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram, all very scroll-heavy apps. And the allowed time is basically none during my blocked access periods, but I do have unlimited access during the access periods. And then the blocked access periods is from midnight to 1800. So I can only access them from 1800 to midnight, which is about 6 hours. And I find that this limits my scrolling during sleep times and during the day when I'm at peak energy and focus, so I can ensure it doesn't get in the way of my more important tasks and ensure that I'm really using those peak energy and focus times towards the important tasks so I get them done more efficiently. In the evenings when I'm chilling, I can scroll and reply to people. This is often when we're watching TV or just doing chores or something, so it's not really getting in the way of anything, so it's fine for me to catch up on that stuff. Now for actually implementing these block access periods, on my laptop and desktops, I use the Stay Focused Chrome extension, which basically when you go to a blocked site, it's just going to have like a pop-up that says like, don't go here. And I think I can show you this actually. So if I go to Twitter, it's going to block it and it says, hey, shouldn't you be working? And so I can't actually access the site because it's blocking it. On my phone is similar. I use the built-in work mode. I'm on Samsung Android, and so that's what they call it, but I think all modern phones have a version of this, like focus mode thing, and usually you can set access times and you can tell it to do not disturb if you want, but you can also say what apps are allowed to be accessed or to send you notifications. And so I use this to block basically all apps unless I find that I actually need that app during normal hours, and this has worked well for me for doing it on the phone. The next strategy is to time block your calendar so you always have a main thing to work on. I found that social media and doom scrolling often creeps in when you don't have a specific important thing to be working on during a period of time. By time blocking your day, you can ensure there's always something important to focus on. Once that's done, you can use your free time as you wish, which may mean scrolling, but often not. In a typical day, I carve out time blocks for my most important activities. So sleep, exercise, my side projects like me making these videos, work, chores, and free time, which is usually where my scrolling goes, and more recently for feeding and putting my child to sleep. For more on how I do my time blocking and my calendar, you can check out this post right here. Now, I'll note that it's not 100% effective, but usually if I have a specific important thing to be doing, I won't just stop and scroll. I'll do the important thing first, then stop and scroll, which is at least a step change better in terms of protecting my focus and my time. Now for my calendar and time blocking, I just use Google Calendar with color-coded blocks. Nothing fancy, I found it works great, and so that's what I go with. And my next strategy is to keep a to-do list to ensure you accomplish everything you wanted to before you start scrolling. So I think time blocks are great, but the whole idea is that you will finish the thing within the given time block. This means every time block will likely have some spare time around the edges, whether it's at the beginning because you're waiting on something, or maybe at the end because you finished early. As discussed, the spare time is dangerous, as this is often where doom scrolling creeps in, so we need a way to keep track of specific important things we want to do before we veg with scrolling. And the way I do that is with to-do lists. So I have two main to-do lists that I use. One is a daily to-do list, which are my must-do items for the day, which I try to time block into my calendar. So these are typically already encoded in my calendar because I must do them, so I prioritize with my time blocks. And then the second one is an inbox to-do list. And these are like could do, should do items or actions that I log throughout the day that I might want to do soon, but I don't have like a specific urgency for it, or it's okay for them to sit around, or maybe I'm still like mulling it over, just things I want to come back to and might want to do. And so like I mentioned, I time block my must-do items in my calendar to better ensure that I'm prioritizing my time to get them done. But in those off times, I may pull forward an inbox item to get done if none of my must-dos can fit into the typical 10 to 15 minute flex time around the edges. And I want to note that this this doesn't prevent mindless scrolling outright, but I found having alternative options has been a great way to replace the scrolling habit with something a bit more productive. So instead of just being like, oh, I have a few minutes, let me just sit down and scroll, I might say, oh, I have a few minutes, let me look at my inbox of to-do lists, and I can scroll that and find something that I can get done in the next few minutes, or maybe find some time to do it later in the day or later in the week. Now for my daily to-do lists, I use Notion. I have a little template, which I go over in this post, my simple daily to-do list as a software engineer. And then for my inbox to-do lists, I use Trello, and I've done this for years and years and years. And so for more on how I use Trello as an inbox, you can check out how I run my project backlogs with Trello. Okay, and a bonus strategy that I actually didn't even consider as helping with this until I was writing this post, and I was like, oh wait, this is actually what I use instead of scrolling a lot of the time, is to keep a list of content to consume later instead of scrolling. And so I think the whole idea of scrolling is to find useful, interesting things to consume. We get addicted to it because that is more enjoyable than being bored. Waiting around for something, going to the bathroom, or eating lunch alone, it's kind of boring, so we often just pull out our phone and look at it while we're doing that. Now the problem is not the content itself, but the endless nature of scrolling, which sucks up our time and focus without much in return. And I think really the ROI is one of the biggest issues with endless scrolling, is that you can do it for hours, but you don't actually get anything out of it. And so basically anything else you would do is going to be more enjoyable and fulfilling when you look back on how you spent those hours. But I want to note that there will be times when you're bored and you want to consume some useful, interesting things. And that's totally normal, and I think is actually more useful than blankly sitting in a waiting room for 30 minutes, flipping through whatever magazines they have in stock, if they even have any magazines. So what I do to use this time effectively without engaging the scrolling habit is to keep a list of things I want to consume when I have more time. These are often things like Reddit threads, blog posts, or videos that I've come across during my scrolling windows or have had recommended to me that I want to consume but didn't have time or focus for it at the time. So when I have the urge to scroll in my downtime, I can instead pop out my bookmarks and pick one of the ones near the top and start consuming. There's less scrolling because all of these are items that I want to consume, so I don't have to go very far to find something I want. It's probably going to be like the top 3 or 4 things, which is going to leave more time for me to consume the content, which typically means I enjoy that time more. I know this is content that I saved specifically for later because I want to read it. Compare that to whatever magazine they have in the waiting room. What's the likelihood that that's actually going to have something very interesting to me versus my bookmarks that I know everything here has been saved for me because I'm interested in reading it at a later date. Now for bookmarks, I use Raindrop. I used to use Pocket before it got shut down, and Raindrop came highly recommended. It's pretty good and works across all my devices, phone apps, and laptops, desktops via the Chrome extension. And the Chrome extension is just here. I can click on it. It shows me what it is. I can add notes. I can do a little collection thing, and then I can just hit save. So very simple, very ergonomic. I'll usually end up saving them here on the laptop desktop, and then on my phone is where I'll usually end up reading them with the associated app. Another version I do this with is that I have my Kindle app on my phone loaded up with a book. It's often going to be sci-fi or fantasy for me. I'm currently reading The Wandering Inn, which is pretty good, would recommend. But I sometimes read nonfiction. But the key is that I have this available to me when I have a large chunk of time to read. So instead of I've got 30 minutes before my next engagement, let me scroll my phone, I now have options for other things that I can do with that time that is fulfilling to me, enjoyable to me, but I will actually feel like I've used this time effectively. And reading is one of those things that fulfills me. I think it's probably different for other people. Not everyone gets the same fulfillment out of reading, but I feel fulfilled reading most of the time. And so when I do have these large chunks and I don't have anything else to do really, I've gone through my to-do list or whatever, reading is a great alternative for me to scrolling. One last thing I wanted to call out is news. I think news is very clickbaity and it's very emotional a lot of the times because there's going to be crazy headlines doing things. It's real world stuff. And I think a lot of times people get kind of sucked into the news cycle. And the way that I deal with this is that I want to stay informed, but I also want to avoid the downsides of this, is that I try to stay away from headlines and notifications and any of the scrolling bits. People who scroll news apps on their phone, that's crazy to me. You're asking to be triggered, I think. So I try to stay away from all of those things. And instead what I do is I just get a few of the daily briefing summaries. I think I'm subscribed to the New York Times, Reuters, NPR. I get the Morning Brew. I get TLDR. I get a few of these daily briefing summaries that just goes over the highlights of what happened the past few days. And so when I'm curious about the world, when I'm curious about what other people are talking about, I have a place to go read up on that but a place that doesn't trigger endless scrolling because it has to fit in an email. These are short summaries, so it doesn't last that long, and there's a stop point. Like there's no way to scroll past the end of the email, and so I have a natural stopping point which stops me from sinking more time than I actually want to into them. Next. So I still scroll daily, but it is with much more mindfulness and intent in how and why I scroll. I scroll socials to get new ideas, discuss shared interests with people, and share my own creations. And overall, socials has been a net good for me. Despite all the bad raps it gets, I really do think it's a net good for me and generally for the world, though I do understand there's bad parts of it. They've helped me connect with people all over the world who have shared interests, something I likely couldn't have done without them. There just aren't that many F# enthusiasts in the world, and so the likelihood of finding them IRL when I work remote is pretty slim. Over the course of me making these videos, I've connected with dozens of people online who have the shared interest, which has been really, really incredible. Now, I found that I typically scroll for about 30 to 45 minutes per night with these moderations in place. Then I hang it up and focus on other things that are more fulfilling to me. Now, I realize that this is still probably more than is healthy, but the trade-off seems okay to me and is much better than the 1 to 3 hours a day I used to spend before I put these moderations in place. And I think the key part is because I have this system in place, if I decide 30 to 45 minutes is too much, I have more levers to pull to lower that. For example, by adding in usage times to block things after 30 minutes of usage per day. Now, this has worked pretty well for me, and I really hope that some of these tips are useful to you as you try to balance your own scrolling times as well. Now, if you like this post, you might also like my simple daily to-do list as a software engineer, maximize productivity and minimize waste. You might also be interested in how I plan my day as a senior software engineer, a simple scalable system for getting the most important thing done every day, really focusing in on my time block system. And finally, I quit coffee for 90 days. Here's how it affected me as a software engineer. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.